Over the next week, Lyara visited Ethan's lab under the cover of darkness. Together, they delved into a clandestine research project, poring over data from every angle. They extracted small samples of Lyara's genetic material, peered through microscopes at the subcellular processes that threaten her life. Long nights were spent comparing Vyari and human DNA, looking for the elusive marker that could stabilize her unraveling strands. During these tense sessions, the pair developed a quiet familiarity. Small, hesitant smiles shared over steaming cups of stimulant tea, gentle reassurances in the face of daunting results. Although they had begun as strangers thrown together by crisis, an unspoken warmth took root between them, a synergy of sorts. Yet, for Ethan, the moral and scientific ramifications gnawed at him incessantly. He found himself penning frantic notes, scribbling half-coherent theories about how an interspecies bond, particularly a romantic or reproductive one, could alter a Vyari's genetic trajectory. There were so many unknowns, and so much secrecy required, that he felt himself perched on a precarious moral ledge. One night, after painstakingly verifying the data collected from Lyara's blood samples, Ethan noticed an odd detail. It was as though part of Lyara's DNA was incomplete, simply missing key fragments. And in another slice of her genome, these missing fragments should have latched onto a specialized sequence for self-repair. Except that sequence remained inert. The puzzle was maddening. Sleep eluded him. Dawn found him still hunched over a lab bench, scanning readouts in fatigued determination. In the early morning hush, he heard soft footsteps behind him. Lyara stood near the entrance, her expression subdued. "I see you haven't slept," she said quietly. "I haven't either." With a heavy sigh, Ethan pinched the bridge of his nose. "I keep hitting the same dead end. There's a partial match with certain sequences found in humans, but to fully trigger it, you'd need to conceive, I think. But the magnitude of it, it's beyond anything I've studied. And the risk." Lyara's eyes lowered, cheeks tinted with faint color. "I know. The data suggests that we must form the bond physically, intimately. It's not enough for me to simply share a life with you. We must mate, or the gene exchange I need to survive remains dormant." Ethan's mind spun. This was beyond complicated, beyond the boundaries of his professional code. But for Lyara, the stakes were life and death. No matter how he reasoned it, the conclusion remained the same. Only a direct biological melding could awaken the self-repair mechanism in her genes. "Then it's real," Ethan whispered. "Your ultimatum. There is no alternative." Lyara came to stand beside him, her hair gleaming in the filtered morning light. "If you cannot do this for me, I will die," she said softly, eyes shimmering with unspoken longing. But it's more than just physical. In the Vyari bonding tradition, there is an emotional, even psychic aspect. This synergy merges not just bodies, but hearts, minds. Perhaps you have witnessed glimpses of our telepathic heritage? We do not read minds, not exactly, but strong emotions flow through us, resonating with those we care for. Ethan nodded, recalling how some Vyari couples displayed empathic resonance. A wave of excitement, fear, and fascination spread through him. He realized how alone Lyara must feel, carrying this burden. "All right," he said, clearing his throat. Let's keep researching. We can figure out if there's a safer method, an approach that might not require us to, rush into anything. We have a month, right?" Lyara's gaze sank to the floor. "Less than 3 weeks now. Time runs shorter each day." His breath hitched. 3 weeks was not long at all. And as if her words summoned a physical response, Ethan noticed a faint tremor in her limbs, the slightest quiver that hinted at her body's internal battle. This was no idle threat. She was truly beginning to deteriorate. Resolved, he guided her to a seat. "We'll push forward. We'll find a solution. But if it really comes to that, I will not abandon you." Lyara mustered a small, radiant smile, one that eclipsed her worry for a moment. "Thank you," she whispered. "You are kinder than I dared hope, Ethan Cole." In Corsair, the streets were broad, paved with a stone that shimmered under the midday suns. Buildings curved in graceful arcs, culminating in tall spires topped by swirling crystals. Energies of ancient design pulsed through these cities, a synergy of technology and art that only the Vyari could create. Ethan rarely ventured into the city, especially after the Planetary Council had laid strict guidelines on human movement outside designated research zones. But Lyara insisted they travel together, that he meet with one of her confidants, an elder who might quietly confirm the ancient lore regarding this genetic bond. So they walked side by side, hooded cloaks pulled low to hide Ethan's distinct features and Lyara's recognizable face. The throngs of Vyari moving about did not seem to pay them heed, though Ethan's heart thumped with fear of discovery. It was one thing to break the rules in his lab. It was another to show himself in the heart of Vyari civilization with a woman who defied her own traditions to seek him out. They slipped through narrow alleys and winding corridors until they reached a small dwelling. The interior was dim, lit by flickering orbs that floated near the ceiling, gently bobbing with each breath of air. Candles of sweet-smelling resin burned near an altar, upon which sat an ornate symbol that Ethan didn't recognize. Then, from a shadowed corner, stepped an ancient Vyari man. His face bore the deep creases of advanced age. His once lilac skin faded to a muted lavender. Eyes, milky with cataracts, flickered with surprising alertness. He wore a medallion with the same strange symbol from the altar, and his voice carried a gravitas that hushed all sound in the chamber. "Lyara," he breathed, "you have come." She bowed low, respectful. "Yes, venerable Aractan. I am in need of your wisdom and your silence." "This is Ethan Cole, the human." Aractan's pale gaze fixed on Ethan. "So, the prophecy, the old stories that one might find renewal in the outsider's line, you believe them to be true?" Ethan cleared his throat. "I don't know if I'd call it prophecy. We have some scientific evidence that suggests a particular gene sequence in humans might help Lyara, but we're not certain. It was foretold," Aractan cut in, "by those who walked the path of union before. Our histories say that in times past, a lost tribe of the Vyari mingled with an off-world race. Their children lived free of the genetic plague that was ravaging them. But we had only fragments of records, half lost in war. Many doubted." He paused, turning to Lyara. "Yet you have placed your life in the hands of this human." Lyara bowed again. "Yes, I have but weeks left, and I sense the bond is strong in him. He can spark the healing within me if we commit to the full measure of union." Aractan moved closer, old bones creaking. He studied Ethan with a subtle suspicion. Then, he gestured for them to sit around a low table in the center of the room. "I will do as you ask, child. I will not reveal your secret, nor hinder your choice. Yet, know that if you fail, you both risk more than your lives. The Courtier Council is not merciful to those who break fundamental laws. In the matter of a human mating with a Vyari, that is the gravest taboo of all." Ethan and Lyara exchanged uneasy glances, but they also felt a glimmer of hope. If Aractan had validated the ancient tale, then perhaps there truly was a way. They talked in hushed tones for hours, unraveling the threads of Vyari myth, referencing hidden manuscripts that Aractan had preserved. Text after text alluded to a time of union, to an off-worlder who carried the dormant key to genetic freedom. At last, Aractan pressed a small carved totem into Lyara's hands. "This was passed down through my family line," he explained. "They said it would guide the chosen. Whether it holds any real power, I cannot say, but it has been a talisman of hope in dark times." Lyara accepted the artifact reverently. It was shaped like two intertwined figures, neither purely Vyari nor fully human, locked in a graceful dance. Ethan felt a strange pull from it, as though it whispered stories older than the planet itself. When their meeting concluded, Aractan walked them to the door. Before they departed into the alley, he gently touched Lyara's brow, murmuring a phrase in the ancient Vyari tongue. She visibly relaxed at his words, as though bolstered by his blessing. Ethan followed her out, shoulders tense. Already, he was anticipating the difficulties to come, the need for secrecy, the moral complexity, the near certainty that they would have to consummate something that would forever bind them together. Yet, as they stepped back into the city's bustle, Ethan felt Lyara's hand brush against his lightly, a brief gesture of solidarity. In that fleeting moment, he realized his fear was accompanied by an undercurrent of something else. Longing? Desire? He hardly recognized it, but it stirred within him, fueled by the closeness of their predicament. He glanced at her face, partially concealed by the hood. Even so, he could sense her gratitude. And so they pressed on, hearts and minds swirling with the knowledge that the clock was ticking, their destinies entwined. They returned to the research dome, but trouble lurked on the horizon. Within days, robed envoys from the Courtier Council arrived, knocking on Ethan's door to inspect his activities and ensure he was abiding by planetary protocols. Word had evidently spread that he was venturing into the city more often, stirring the council's suspicion. Ethan greeted them politely, doing his best to stay calm, though his pulse hammered in his throat. The envoys, tall and silent, drifted through his lab like ethereal phantoms, scanning every corner. Lyara remained hidden in a concealed chamber Ethan had improvised. Although the visitors eventually left without incident, their presence cast a long shadow of anxiety. He redoubled his secrecy. Meanwhile, Lyara's condition began to worsen. Although outwardly she still bore a regal bearing, flashes of pain crossed her features more frequently. She reported moments of dizziness, weakness, and an occasional tremor in her left arm. Each symptom tore at Ethan's scientific detachment, making him painfully aware that time was slipping away. One night, while analyzing the data from Lyara's last blood test, Ethan noticed that her cellular degradation was accelerating. He pressed his palms to his face, feeling the weight of impossibility. Every conventional method he tried fell short. He was no medical doctor, but no Vyari physician would dare treat her if they knew her plight. Lyara entered the lab, concern etched into her violet eyes. She glanced at the readouts, brow furrowing. "It's worse, isn't it?" Ethan nodded heavily. "I don't think we have much longer. Another week, maybe two, before the damage is irreversible." She steadied herself against a table, breathing shallowly. "Then we must act soon. Ethan, we have done all the research we can, haven't we?" He swallowed hard. "It would appear so. According to all the data, the only way to trigger your body's repair mechanism is if we consummate the bond in the Vyari manner. Your race's epigenetic triggers require that psychic-emotional link as well. If we do this halfway, if it's purely physical or purely emotional, it won't be enough." Her lips curved into a sad smile. "So you see, we must join, not just in body, but in spirit. My species calls it the Delkarth, the great mating, the synergy of mind and flesh. Only then can the self-repair sequence be initiated. Otherwise I will cease to exist." Ethan finished for her. His voice trembled, recalling her first desperate words. He looked away, the ethical dilemma raging. Could he do this, truly? Was it simply an act of compassion, or was there something deeper at work? Lyara studied him intently. "I understand your reservations, Ethan. To humans, such an act may carry heavy implications. For me, it is also a profound commitment. I do not wish to force you, but I do not want to die." The sincerity in her voice unraveled the last threads of Ethan's hesitation. He stepped toward her, gently resting a hand on her shoulder. "If it's the only way to save you, then yes. We'll do it. We'll find the right time, the right place, to ensure you're safe afterwards." Relief shone in her gaze. "Thank you. From my heart, I thank you." Armed with the knowledge gleaned from Aracton, Ethan and Lyara prepared for the Delkarth. They discovered that the ritual involved certain rare herbs, specific mental exercises, and an environment aligned with the planet's magnetic fields at a precise time. When Veyra's two moons overlapped in the night sky, forming a luminous eclipse of swirling light. Lyara explained that the synergy between the moons ignited a resonance in Vyari physiology, amplifying their empathic capabilities. A perfect time for forging bonds. Yet, the council would be watchful during this cosmic alignment, as it was a sacred event. Many Vyari would gather in shrines, offering prayers to the twin moons. For Ethan and Lyara, secrecy would be paramount. Several days before the eclipse, they journeyed into the wilderness beyond the city. Here, forest groves glowed with towering mushrooms, their phosphorescent caps casting dancing shadows across the ground. Fluttering creatures resembling moth-like birds drifted in the gloom, their wings shimmering with pulses of turquoise and gold. They established a makeshift shelter in a secluded clearing beside a glimmering stream. It was far from prying eyes, but not so distant as to be unsafe for Lyara if her condition worsened. There, they gathered the herbs required, petrala leaves, silva blossoms, and the elusive Nera root, which only bloomed under starlight. These, once crushed and mixed in a ceremonial bowl, would create an aromatic compound that aided in opening the psychic channels essential for the Delcarth. By day, Ethan meticulously tested each ingredient, ensuring none were toxic to humans. By night, he and Lyara sat close to a small fire, discussing the deeper aspects of Vyari bonding. She spoke softly, teaching him the meditations needed to align their minds. Each evening, he practiced the slow, rhythmic breathing, attempting to let his thoughts drift, to open himself to the possibility of empathic resonance. At first, he felt nothing. But slowly, intangible sensations began to flicker through him, glimpses of Lyara's emotions, faint as the hush of a distant whisper. As the day of the eclipse drew near, Lyara's health faltered more severely. Her skin sometimes took on a dull sheen, and her eyes grew weary. Yet, a fierce determination burned within her. She refused to yield to the creeping darkness in her body. "We must be ready for the eclipse," she said one afternoon, her voice taut with pain. "That is when the bond's power will be strongest. If we wait any longer, it will be too late." Ethan gently brushed a stray lock of her shimmering hair away from her face. "Then we'll do it as planned. I'll stay with you the entire time. Make sure you're safe before, during, and after." A trembling smile touched her lips. "My very life depends on it. And it's not just that. You have become dear to me, Ethan Cole. Against all logic, I find myself feeling a tenderness toward you. It is not simply necessity. There is true affection here." Her honest admission startled him, though he could not deny that an electric thread had entwined itself around his heart. Her courage, her vulnerability, she had touched him in ways no one else ever had. He swallowed. I feel something too, Lyara. I can't quite explain it, but..." She silenced him with a gentle fingertip against his lips. "We have time to explore these emotions, if we succeed. For now, let us focus on the right." He nodded, blinking away a sudden rush of warmth in his eyes. The bond they were about to forge was both epic and terrifying. In the hush of that clearing, they held each other's gaze, aware that the next few days would decide everything. At last, the long-awaited night of the eclipse arrived. The forest was unusually quiet, as though even the nocturnal creatures sensed the gravity of the celestial event. High above, Veyra's two moons drew closer to alignment, their luminous surfaces casting overlapping halos of emerald and silver across the sky. Ethan and Lyara stood in the center of the clearing, wearing simple ceremonial garments. The aromatic mixture of herbs smoldered in a shallow bowl, emitting a sweetly pungent smoke that drifted around them in slow spirals. It clung to their hair and skin, creating an otherworldly haze. Lyara began chanting in Vyari, her voice soft yet full of an ancient cadence that made Ethan's hair stand on end. He could not decipher the words, but he sensed the meaning, a call to the cosmic energies, an invitation for the life forces of Veyra to bless their union. Within moments, Ethan felt a strange tingling in his fingertips and across his scalp. An aura of subtle energy seemed to swirl around them both, heightening the connection. Guided by Lyara's instructions, Ethan placed one hand upon her chest, the other on the bowl of smoldering herbs. She, in turn, mirrored his stance, resting a hand over his heart. Their eyes locked, unwavering, as she chanted the final verses of the Delcarth invocation. The moment the moons fully overlapped, a radiant beam of combined moonlight pierced the clearing, surrounding them in a nearly phosphorescent glow. At that exact instant, Ethan felt a dizzying surge, as though an invisible current sparked between them. Lyara's eyes widened, glowing with a faint golden luminescence. He gasped, taken aback by the force of the sensation. Emotions not his own washed through him. Memories of Lyara's childhood in Corsair, the heartbreak of discovering her cursed genetics, the fear that had haunted her daily for years. He felt her pride, her pain, her desperate hope. Simultaneously, he sensed her feeling him. The boy on Earth who'd been teased for his boundless curiosity, the young scientist who'd come to Veyra to push the boundaries of knowledge, and the loneliness he often tried to hide. Tears spilled onto Lyara's cheeks, and Ethan's chest tightened. Their hearts pounded in unison. The empathic flood was overwhelming, yet strangely comforting, like returning to a home you never knew you missed. Without hesitation, they drew closer. Their foreheads touched, breath mingling in the luminous haze. The entire clearing seemed to hum with a tangible vibrancy, as if the planet itself approved. Then their lips met, and a wave of warmth radiated outward, colliding with the moonlight's glow and swirling the herb smoke in hypnotic patterns. For Lyara, the impact was immediate. A spark flared along her nervous system, activating dormant gene sequences, coaxing hidden segments of DNA to fuse correctly. She moaned softly, every cell within her igniting in the process of renewal. For Ethan, his mind spun in euphoria as they consummated the bond physically under the watchful brilliance of the eclipse. He felt more alive than ever before, connected to another being at the most profound level he could imagine. Time blurred, punctuated by the rhythmic chanting, the soft murmur of shared breath, and the silent witness of the glimmering forest. Then the chanting ceased, replaced by a deep hush, as if the universe itself held its breath. When it was over, when the last note of the ritual faded and they at last drew apart, trembling, they both fell to their knees. The moons gradually shifted out of alignment, and the overlaying glow receded, returning the night to a quieter darkness. Yet, in Ethan's chest, a resonant thrum persisted. He sensed Lyara's presence in his very soul, and she sensed his. For several minutes, neither spoke. They simply knelt there, arms around each other, hearts drumming in tandem. Finally, Ethan dared to break the silence. "Lyara," he whispered, voice hoarse, "are you?" She inhaled sharply, as if testing new lungs. Then, with a watery smile, she nodded. "I feel renewed. Stronger than I've felt in so long. As if the threads that threatened to snap within me are woven anew." Ethan exhaled, relief and awe mingling in his chest. Gently, he brushed his fingers over her cheek, wiping away the tears. "We did it," he said, almost in disbelief. "You're going to live." Lyara's eyes glistened. "Because of you, Ethan Cole. Because you were willing to risk everything to save me." A soft laugh escaped him, tinged with exhaustion. "It wasn't just me. You saved yourself by believing in this, in us, in what might be possible if we trusted each other." They embraced, the bond pulsing with quiet certainty. As the forest came alive once more, chirps, soft rustlings, the swirl of night breezes, the two travelers realized that their union was more than a mere act of survival. It was, in many ways, the birth of something extraordinary, a shared destiny that even the laws of the Vyari could not deny. When morning arrived, the eclipse was long past, and the forest glowed with diurnal radiance. Ethan awoke beside Lyara, uncertain whether the events of the previous night had been a vivid dream. But one look at her face dispelled his doubts. Her color was fuller, her gaze bright, and her expression luminous with renewed vitality. Before they could revel too long, practical matters reasserted themselves. They had defied Vyari law. The Corsair Council would be suspicious if they learned of Lyara's miracle recovery overnight, especially in the presence of a human. Both recognized that danger lurked just beyond the trees. And so they made a plan. First, return to the dome, conduct a new round of tests on Lyara's biology, and confirm her renewed stability. Then, they would decide if flight was necessary, perhaps find sanctuary in a distant outpost or call in a favor from Ethan's colleagues in orbit. The alternative was to risk confrontation with the Council in Corsair. They packed their meager campsite, quenching the small fire and gathering all traces of the ritual. Lyara kept the carved totem safe against her chest, as if it were a piece of her soul. Together, they began the journey back towards civilization. The trek was peaceful at first. Lyara seemed to move with increased vigor, as though a wellspring of energy poured through her veins. But as they neared the outskirts of Corsair, they heard loud voices echoing across the hills. Scouts from the Council. Both Ethan and Lyara's hearts sank as they realized they were being actively searched for. "Quick, this way," Ethan hissed, ducking behind a rocky outcrop. Lyara followed, her breath tight with anxiety. They peered around the edge, spying a group of armed Vyari clad in ceremonial armor. They were systematically combing the terrain, calling out her name in harsh tones. Ethan felt the rush of panic. If they were discovered now, the penalty would be dire. He gripped Lyara's hand. "We need another route. I think there's a path that runs along the river, deeper in the forest. Let's try that." She nodded, and they turned away, sliding carefully through undergrowth. But the council scouts were thorough. The pair soon found themselves dodging patrols every half-mile. Anxiety weighed on them like a physical force, spurred by the knowledge that Lyara's wondrous recovery would only provoke the council's wrath. They would not understand, and they certainly would not forgive. Eventually, the sun rose high, and the scouts spread out even wider. Desperate, Ethan and Lyara slipped into the shallows of the Crystal River itself, wading along its bank to avoid leaving footprints. The water was cold, but at least it muffled their passage. As they traveled downstream, they heard the faint hum of a small flyer overhead. It skimmed the treetops, scanning the area with an ominous whir. Ethan pressed himself against the riverbank, heart pounding. Surely it was the council's search craft. Tensions soared. Then, mercifully, the flyer drifted away, and the patrols receded. Gradually, Ethan dared to hope that they'd evaded detection for the time being. Late in the afternoon, they arrived at a secluded inlet near the dome's location. Tired and soaked, they stumbled onto the shore, relieved to see no watchers in the vicinity. Rapidly, they made their way to the lab's hidden side entrance. Once inside, Ethan activated the security lockdown, sealing them away from prying eyes. Only then did they collapse onto the floor, gasping from the adrenaline of near capture. In that moment, the seriousness of their predicament settled upon them both. "We can't stay here," Ethan said quietly, voice trembling. "They'll come back. The council might comb every inch of this region if they suspect you sought me out." Lyara hugged her knees, face drawn. "Where can we go? If the council exiles me, I lose the right to remain in any Vyari city. And for you, any open defiance might jeopardize your entire mission, maybe even cause an interplanetary incident." He ran a hand through his damp hair, exhaling. "I do have a shuttle that can reach orbit, but it's only meant for short-range transport from here to the station. If we flee, we'll become fugitives. And the question is, do we want to do that?" She studied him with solemn eyes. "It might be the only way to survive. My fate is sealed if I remain in Korsher's jurisdiction. But, Ethan, I don't want to drag you into exile." A strange determination lit within him. "I'm already in it with you, Lyara. You're my mate now, by Vyari standards, right? And by human standards, well, it's complicated, but I'm not leaving you. I made a promise." She reached for his hand, interlocking their fingers. "Thank you," she whispered. I love you, Ethan. Not because you saved my life, but because I've seen your soul, and you've seen mine." A surge of emotion coursed through him. In the face of so many dangers, she had spoken those words. Gently, he bent to kiss her. "I love you too, Lyara. Whatever comes next, we face it together." Before they could finalize any escape, events overtook them. The next day, a squad of council enforcers arrived at the lab, demanding entry under the pretext of an urgent inspection. Ethan had no choice but to open the door. He and Lyara stood side by side, prepared to face their judgment. The lead enforcer, a stoic Vyari named Shaylis, stepped forward. A scowl creased her brow as she beheld Lyara, seemingly healthy despite her rumored genetic ailment. "You have broken many sacred edicts," she declared, voice laced with anger. "To mate with an off-worlder is a transgression beyond forgiveness. And you, human, have meddled in affairs that do not concern your kind." Ethan stepped forward, heart racing. "I'm sorry for breaking your laws," he said, "but Lyara's life was at stake. I only did what I believed was right." Shaylis's gaze flicked to Lyara. "You were to face your destiny with dignity. Instead, you have bound yourself to an outsider. We cannot allow this union to stand. You must appear before the council at once." With no alternative, Ethan and Lyara surrendered. Guards escorted them to a large transport, which soared above the forest until it reached the towering spires of Korsher. The city's grandeur felt more menacing than ever. Sharp arcs of architecture loomed like silent witnesses to their predicament. The council's central chamber was a circular hall of polished stone, ringed by tall seats where the councilors sat in austere silence. Their robes, deep indigo with intricate silver patterns, denoted centuries-old authority. In the center of the chamber lay a dais upon which Ethan and Lyara were forced to kneel, flanked by guards. A stern counselor with platinum hair, introduced as High Counselor Sereth, rose to address them. "Lyara, daughter of House Velshar, you stand accused of violating the fundamental law that prohibits interspecies mating. You have defiled the sanctity of Vyari lineage. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Another counselor, with cold gray eyes, pointed at Ethan. And you, Ethan Cole, have overstepped the bounds of your research mandate. You meddled in our genetic heritage. This cannot go unpunished. Ethan squared his shoulders, summoning courage. With respect, we only did what was necessary to save Lyara's life. This arrangement did not harm your people. It merely saved one of your own. Saratha's lips pressed into a thin line. Your ignorance is astounding, human. Vyari tradition forbids such unions because they corrupt the purity of our essence. We have guarded against outside mixing for millennia to ensure our culture, our gifts, remain unsullied. A wave of indignation coursed through Ethan. Corrupt? You speak of life-saving help as though it's a disease. The counselors bristled. One even stood, fists clenched. But Lyara held up a trembling hand. Please, listen, she implored. I was cursed with a fatal flaw. Without Ethan's genetic compatibility, I would be dead. Isn't it better to live, to thrive, than to die for an outdated tradition? Shock rippled among some younger counselors, while older ones scoffed. Saratha's eyes flickered with both anger and something akin to fear. This is blasphemy, he hissed. At that moment, a frail voice rose from the back of the hall. No, it is truth. Heads turned to see Elder Aracton, leaning on a staff, making his way forward. The guard tried to block him, but a younger counselor stepped aside, allowing the ancient figure to pass. Aracton, Sarath spat. You dare speak here? He moved to the dais, standing beside Ethan and Lyara. I do. We have known each other many years, Sarath, and you know I have studied our oldest texts. This union is not a corruption. It is, in fact, the reason our race survived an ancient cataclysm centuries ago. The stories say our forebears once mated with off-worlders to overcome a deadly plague. Their children were stronger, free of disease, just as Lyara is now free. A wave of agitation swept the chamber. Sarath glared, though a flicker of uncertainty crossed his features. Legends, myths, they have no place in our modern code. Aracton's staff struck the floor with surprising force. And yet we cling to that code, ignoring the lessons of our own past? We pride ourselves on not needing outsiders, but perhaps that has been our folly. I present living proof. Lyara stands healthy before us, her curse undone. Will we now punish her? Will we punish the one who saved her? Silence hung thick. Ethan felt sweat bead on his brow as he awaited the council's verdict. Finally, Sarath raised a hand, and the hall stilled. You asked the council to disregard centuries of law, he said, voice quivering with anger. On the basis of your archaic legends. You risked the dissolution of all we hold sacred. But if there is truth to your words, we must verify it. He gestured at the guards. Take them to the medical wing. Let our physicians conduct thorough examinations of Lyara. If it is proven that she truly overcame a fatal genetic defect by bonding with this human, then we shall deliberate. Until then, they remain under guard. Aracton gave Ethan a subtle nod of reassurance. Lyara, for her part, kept her chin high, though her hands trembled. The council might yet deliver a harsh sentence, but at least they would investigate. At least there was a sliver of hope that the truth would prevail. Under heavy guard, Ethan and Lyara were brought to a sterile, gleaming medical facility within the council's domain. Vyari physicians, wearing emotionless expressions, scanned Lyara's vital signs, analyzed her cellular structure, and compared them with her previous medical records. The hush of machinery and the occasional beep of monitors provided an unnerving backdrop as Ethan waited on the sidelines. Days passed in a blur of tests. Lyara submitted to scans that mapped her neural pathways, revealing no trace of the degenerative patterns once threatening her life. The genetic unraveling was gone, replaced by a stable tapestry of integrated Vyari human markers. Some physicians stared at the results in stark disbelief. Others whispered among themselves, uncertain how such a transformation could have occurred. All the while, Ethan remained under guard, pacing in an adjacent waiting room. He worried not just about the council's response, but about Lyara's emotional well-being. The bond they shared hummed faintly within him, allowing him to sense her fear, her exhaustion, and her hope. At last, a senior medic, flanked by Shayleys and two other guards, summoned Ethan into the examination chamber. Lyara stood at the center, clothed in a simple white gown, eyes downcast. The medic, his voice subdued with awe, declared, "Her genetic structure is now stable. The flaw, gone, replaced by an active synergy with certain human gene segments. We have never seen such a phenomenon." Shaylee's stern face twitched with unease. She turned to Ethan. "So it's true. You, a human, have saved Lyara's life. But you have also cast our laws into disarray." Ethan held Lyara's gaze. "We never meant to challenge your ways, only to save her." Before Shaylee's could respond, the doors opened. High Counselor Sereth entered, robes billowing behind him. He inspected the readouts, expression grim. "I had hoped to prove Arakton's theories wrong," he admitted coldly. "Yet here stands the evidence. Lyara is indeed cured." An uneasy hush settled over the room. Sereth looked at Lyara, his face betraying a swirl of emotions. Anger, confusion, perhaps even a sliver of reluctant respect. Then he spoke. "In recognition of this unprecedented development, the Council has decided to convene an emergency assembly. We shall present these findings to all the counselors. The fate of you both will be decided by vote." Ethan's stomach churned. A vote could go either way, but at least they had a chance. No summary execution, no immediate sentencing. Lyara's eyes flickered with cautious optimism. "As you will," she said, bowing her head with the old Vyari grace. Ethan followed suit, hoping the council might choose compassion over tradition. Whether that was naive, he couldn't say. The emergency assembly was called the next day. Word spread quickly across Corsair, drawing not just council members, but also curious Vyari citizens. Crowds formed outside the towering council hall, murmuring with anticipation over the scandal. An off-worlder who had mated with a Vyari? A miraculous cure? Such things echoed like a thunderclap through the city's consciousness. Escorted by a dozen guards, Ethan and Lyara once again knelt upon the central dais. Over 100 counselors now filled the tiered seats, their expressions ranging from open hostility to eager curiosity. Sereth took his place at the apex of the circle, flanked by advisors. Arakton was present, standing quietly at the periphery. He offered them a subtle nod of encouragement. Sereth opened the proceedings. "We have gathered here to address the gravest of transgressions against our laws, and yet also to witness the most profound anomaly in our medical history. Lyara Velshar stands cured of a fatal defect, thanks to the interference of the human, Ethan Cole. We must weigh the sanctity of our traditions against the undeniable proof of her survival." A hush followed. Then, counselors rose one by one, offering their viewpoints. Some decried the union as an affront to Vyari purity, insisting that harsh punishment was the only way to uphold their cultural identity. Others argued that new possibilities for curing genetic ailments might be found through collaboration with humans, and that ignoring such knowledge out of fear would be the true betrayal of Vyari legacy. Through it all, Ethan's heart pounded. He held Lyara's hand tightly, drawing strength from her presence. She remained stoic, though he felt her trembling occasionally, the bond revealing her tension. At last, Sereth called upon Arakton to speak. The elderly figure stepped forward with measured composure. "Fellow counselors," he began, voice resonant, "I ask you to see beyond your fear. Our laws once served to protect us from exploitation and contamination, yes, but that was long ago. We are no longer at war. We have discovered that in certain cases, outside genetics can heal mortal flaws in our own. Should we discard this gift for the sake of antiquated isolationism?" He paused, letting his words settle. "Change is frightening, but turning our backs on new knowledge will condemn many others like Lyara to needless death. Is that truly the Vyari way?" Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Some counselors nodded thoughtfully. Others glowered. Finally, Sereth spoke again, the tension in his tone unmistakable. "We shall now vote on the fate of Lyara and her human mate. If the majority deems them guilty of irreparable corruption, they will face exile or, worse, execution. If, however, the assembly believes their act reveals a path of progress, we shall spare them and permit further study. Make your decision known." One by one, the counselors indicated their stance, whether through an electronic vote or raising their staff in symbolic gesture. The crowd outside buzzed, straining to witness this historic moment. As the final votes were tallied, Sereth's face remained impassive. Then a clerk presented the results to him. His stern gaze scanned them, lips taut. Ever so slightly, his features softened. He turned to the dais. By a narrow margin, the council has decreed that Lyara Velshar and her human mate shall be spared punishment. Instead, they shall be subject to ongoing supervision to ensure that no threat to Vyari society arises. Furthermore, the Council acknowledges the possibility that certain human traits may save future Vyari lives, and we shall permit cautious research into this phenomenon, under strict oversight, of course. A collective gasp spread through the chamber, followed by a mixture of applause and grumbles. Relief flooded Ethan, his vision swimming momentarily as tension bled out of his body. Lyara pressed her forehead to his, a gesture of deepest gratitude, tears glinting in her eyes. Sareth raised a hand, silencing the gathered. However, he continued, this does not mean the law is undone. It remains forbidden for Vyari and humans to intermingle without approval. Lyara Velshar, you are granted exceptional status due to your circumstances. But know that if this arrangement causes harm or chaos, we will revisit our judgment. His final words carried a stark warning, yet the conclusion was undeniable. They were free, allowed to remain together. Under watch, perhaps, but together. Arakton stepped forward, placing a hand on Lyara's shoulder. I congratulate you both, he whispered. You have changed the course of history for our people. Whether that leads to acceptance or conflict remains to be seen. But for now, rejoice in your victory and in life. Ethan felt the corners of his mouth lift into a heartfelt grin. He and Lyara locked eyes, silently celebrating the near-miraculous turn of events. Though challenges lay ahead, they had overcome the impossible. He wrapped an arm around her, and she leaned against him, letting the noise of the assembly wash over them. In the weeks that followed, Ethan and Lyara found themselves at the center of a quiet but significant shift in Vyari attitudes. Their story spread, whispered in corridors and across marketplaces, igniting debates about tradition versus progress. Some labeled them heretics, but many more saw them as pioneers of a new horizon, a future in which the Vyari might embrace collaboration with humans to solve long-standing genetic mysteries. Under the Council's watchful eye, Ethan continued his research from within his dome laboratory, now equipped with improved medical facilities. Together with Lyara, he began documenting her recovery in rigorous scientific detail, hoping to develop a protocol for helping other Vyari afflicted with similar genetic flaws. Progress was slow, hampered by official red tape, but the seeds of change had undeniably been planted. Lyara, no longer haunted by her imminent demise, devoted herself to bridging the gap between their peoples. She made cautious inroads with other Vyari families touched by genetic curses, offering them a glimpse of hope. Whenever disapproving glances threatened to dissuade her, she recalled the unwavering support Ethan had offered, and she pressed on. Their bond deepened with each passing day. The empathic link forged during the Delkarth opened subtle channels of shared emotion, allowing them a level of understanding that transcended words. They navigated cultural differences and overcame initial awkwardness. Over time, they developed an equilibrium of mutual respect and affection, forging a partnership as solid as any in the cosmos. Once, late at night, Ethan stood outside the dome, gazing up at the stars. Lyara emerged from the entrance, her violet skin glowing in the starlight. She joined him, slipping an arm around his waist. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. "I'm thinking," he said, voice hushed with wonder, "that a few months ago, all I wanted was to study the Vyari from a distance. Now, I'm part of your world. And you're part of mine." She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "Yes, and I have never regretted it, not for a second. You have given me life, Ethan Cole. More than that, you have given me reason to believe that maybe our two species can walk side by side." He kissed the top of her head gently, feeling the steady thrum of her heart. "We have a long road ahead, but at least we have each other." She lifted her face, eyes reflecting the scattered constellations overhead. "And that, my love, is enough to face whatever the universe has in store." In the distance, the shimmering lights of Korshur glittered like a cluster of alien fireflies, a reminder of the complex society they were gradually changing from within. Overhead, Veyra's moons drifted through their cycles, silent witnesses to the pair who had broken ancient taboos to forge a bond that just might reshape an entire civilization. For now, they allowed themselves this moment of peace and contentment, basking in the knowledge that they had defied destiny, law, and even biology to choose love over fate. And if the future contained new struggles, well, they would meet them hand in hand, determined to claim a happy ending in a galaxy far too grand for small-minded boundaries. After all, they had already proven that where love and life are at stake, the impossible can become reality. And so, beneath the starlit skies of Veyra, Ethan and Lyara stood united, two souls bound by fate and hope, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together.